Well, can I say thank you, Randall? I have never understood verse 28 about the vultures and the eagles. Never. So now I do.
Thank you, Lucille.
That's also in Ezekiel 38:39. You know.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Can I say on that, actually, I've heard you get lots of false rumors because twice a year, hundreds of thousands of birds of prey pass through Israel.
Yeah.
Going north in the spring and coming south in the autumn.
Yeah.
And you can get literally hundreds of eagles at the same time.
Right.
That happens twice a year. So this is going to be something else. Although it probably will come in the autumn. So just as the same way he allowed all those thousands of quail to land in the desert. Yeah. Well, they're all migrating at that time of the year anyway, in their thousands. He just gathered them together, you know.
It's very comforting because sometimes you think you've heard from the Lord and you think, but did I really? You know, was it really the Lord? And you sort of go over it and over it. And but this seems to suggest, you know, it'll be all right. It won't be like that. Yeah.
That is what I think he's saying to them, Lucille. It will be all right. Yeah. I'll be looking after you.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful.
The scriptures always tell you that, however bad it gets, that you will be looked after if you're faithful to him.
Yeah.
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 Go into your inner room, you know.
Yeah.
I've also heard people say that this inner room is also talking about Gnosticism. Beware personal revelation. Because that is emotion, not prophecy. And the false prophets in the desert could well be you know who.
Well, yeah.
As well. There's never just one meaning, you know.
Yeah, whatever his meaning is, his first concern is whoever's saying it, they don't go out. He says twice, I've told you beforehand, don't go looking. Whatever their thing is, his first concern is they know they don't have to go looking for him. He'll come looking for them. John or Rose have their hand up.
Yeah, just thinking about the vultures and stuff again. The having seen these things for real, they circle around. In fact, they seem to know when something actually is about to die, even before they're dead. And they'll circle around and they'll circle around, and eventually the time will come and they're ready to pounce, as it were, and then they'll come in their droves from miles around, and you haven't seen anything else in the sky for weeks, and suddenly they're all there. It's kind of bizarre, but that's how it happens. And then they make short work of the carcasses. But
their vision is at least 8 times clearer than ours. At least 8.
Yeah.
Some birds, it's 30 times stronger than ours.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't always wait until it's a corpse.
That's very unusual for a vulture to kill. Very unusual.
Well, there's also the marabou storks as well, and other birds of prey that congregate. Yeah, we've seen it. Yeah.
Lots of birds of prey will eat things alive, but never vultures. Yeah. Anyway, the Lord's gathering them.
Any other comments, folks?
I was interested in the sign of the Son of Man from verse 30. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven. Anybody got any thoughts about that?
Revelation also tells you it'll be like lightning flashing from east to west, and all the tribes, everyone's going to see it. So it's not just going to be ordinary lightning. Everyone on earth will see it at the same time, you know.
Okay, so you take it that the sign is this flash, this lightning.
Well, it's certainly associated straight. I think it'd be more than that, but as everyone will see him, it's a supernatural vision of God that everyone on earth will see, whether they're asleep or they're in the bath or they're out gardening, you know. Everybody's going to see it at the same time, how I've always seen it. even though it's impossible humanly, you know.
I've always thought of the cross, but at the same time, I've always thought that's somehow too easy.
It's looking back as well, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Just looking at Strong's, he says the indication, especially ceremonially or supernaturally, miracle, sign, token, or wonder. That word could be translated at. I do like the idea that it's not a signpost. It is the wonder of the Son of Man coming back. No, I must admit I hadn't given it much thought, but is it? I think it's the wonder more than the actual thing.
Yeah.
You will see what's happening.
Yeah. And everyone will know what it is. Everyone.
Yep.
Even the ones mourning, you know.
Yep. Okay, any other questions? Comments? Observations? Right, nobody spoke up. So would somebody please read 32, it's a bit longer this one, to verse 42.
Yeah, I'll do it, Randall.
Thank you, Nick.
Sorry, where are we going to? 40?
42. 32 to 42.
32, 42, yeah. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as you see its branch becoming tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, you know that he is near at the very gates. Truly, I say to you, this generation will not pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father only. As were the days of Noah, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day when Noah entered the ark. And they did not know until the flood came and swept them all away. So will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then 2 men will be in the field, one is taken and one is left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one is taken and one is left. Watch therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming.
Thank you. Right. So we now have fig trees and generations that cause much confusion. So let's go to the first phrase. Now learn this parable from the fig tree. Which fig tree is it? Is it a symbolic fig tree? Is it a real one? Who's heard the suggestion that this fig tree is Israel?
Yeah.
John, sticky hand up.
Yeah.
Yep. So have I, and I think there is something in it, but I think it's too easy to put too much in it because I need to find a clear picture that Israel is in the Old Testament is portrayed as a fig tree. So can I ask you to put your thinking caps on? If I say to you, where in the Old Testament does it compare Israel to a fig tree? Where would you like me to go?
Judges? No.
Pardon?
Judges?
Where in Judges?
I've forgotten, but I'd just add that one of the other Gospels says fig tree and the other trees.
Right.
That's lots of nations rising.
Judges 9 is the parable of the fig tree that was invited to reign over the other trees. And he said, not likely.
It's in Isaiah, but I can't remember where. And it's a parable which is almost identical to the one that Jesus speaks about digging around the garden and stuff.
Right.
Or very similar, should I say.
There's 2 references to fig tree in Isaiah. 34 verse 4 could be a link. All the hosts of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled up like a scroll, and all their hosts shall fall down as the leaf falls from the vine, and as fruit falling from a fig tree. Was it that one, John? Shake it. No. Isaiah 36:16. I don't think it's this one. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for thus says the King of Israel, make peace with me by a present and come out to me, and every one of you eat from his own vine, and everyone from his own fig tree.
I think
and everyone, not that one.
I think I'm wrong then.
Tracy.
Can't hear you.
Hosea 9:10.
Right. Okay. Hosea 9:10. I can help with that. Right. Let me screen share. Hosea 9:10. Right. Let's read it. The day of punishment have come. The days of punishment have come. The days of recompense have come. Israel knows. The prophet is a fool. The spiritual man is insane. I must interject here. I was speaking with a Haredi Jewish rabbi this week on Zoom, and he was talking about, I think it was this very passage, and it says, he translates that from the Hebrew, the spiritual man is crazy. And that just had me laughing. I can't see English Bibles being that blunt about it, right? The spiritual man is insane because of the greatness of your iniquity and great enmity. The watchman of Ephraim is with my God, but the prophets is a fowler's snare in all his ways, enmity in the house of his God. They are deeply corrupted, as in the days of Gibeah. He will remember their iniquity. He will punish their sins. I found Israel like grapes in the wilderness. I saw your fathers as the first fruits of the fig tree in its first season. But they went to Baal Peor and separated themselves to that shame. They became an abomination like the thing they loved. So this isn't a very complimentary passage. Actually, there's a lot of passages in the Old Testament that likens Israel, and Philip says in other translation, in other Gospels, it says the fig tree and other trees. That hadn't stuck with me, not just to the fig tree, but to the vine. And it's often a double comparison. Right? And I could find nowhere where Israel is simply likened to a fig tree without the vine alongside it. And that is partly because Hebrew poetry, you say the same thing twice. And it's not so much the fig tree, it's the fruitfulness or the lack of fruitfulness, I think, is going on here. So let's look at another verse, another two passages where this is there. As I say, I've just picked these. They're near to each other, right? But here, again, we have a bit more than the previous one. In that one, God was looking for fruit from the tree. Here he says, verse 6 and 7 of Joel chapter 1, for a nation has come up against my land, strong and without number. His teeth are the teeth of the lion, and he has fangs of a fierce lion. He has laid waste my vine and ruined my fig tree. He has stripped it bare and thrown it away. Its branches are made white. God takes ownership of both the vine and the fig tree in this passage. In Isaiah, there's a song about the vineyard of the Lord of hosts and how it doesn't produce fruit. Here he takes ownership of both. He goes on, he complains about how they've been, verses 11 and 12, be ashamed, you farmers, wail, you vine dressers, for the wheat and the barley, because the harvest of the field has perished. The vine has dried up, the fig tree has withered, the pomegranate tree, the palm tree also, and the apple tree. All the fields of the tree, all the trees of the field are withered. Surely joy has withered away from the sons of men. But there's some good news in the book of Joel as well. Chapter 2, I'll just read the first paragraph here. Fear not, O land, be glad and rejoice, for the Lord has done marvelous things. Do not be afraid, you beasts of the field, for the open pastures are springing up, and the tree bears its fruit. The fig tree and the vine yield their strength. So he tells them in the second chapter, he's coming to bless them. But I don't think, right, no. The fig tree, as far as I can find, is never used by itself as a sign of Israel. So what is happening here? Johnny, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I found it is about the vine, the vineyard, which you refer to in Isaiah. It's chapter 5, verses 1 to 7. It doesn't refer to a fig tree in there. And to answer the other point that you're making there, the cursing of the fig tree by Jesus as he comes into Jerusalem. That's another reference.
So that is commonly quoted, and it's what I was going to say, that one possible link is that he was pointing to that fig tree and saying, well, I've just cursed Israel, but one day it will come back to life. Now, there may be something in that, but it's not clear. There's another possibility. Where was Jesus doing this teaching?
Mount of Olives.
What?
Where was he doing the teaching? Nick says on the Mount of Olives. What type of plants grew on the Mount of Olives?
Olives, I would think.
That's partly right, but not just olives. They also grew fig trees.
Mm.
What time of the year was this happening?
Well, when he cursed it was in the spring, which wasn't the season for figs anyway.
I know. And when he was crucified, it was in the spring. And this is shortly before he was crucified. So they were sat on a hillside or the top of a hill, and all around them were olive and fig trees in the spring. Perhaps he was simply pointing to the tree that was nearest to them and giving them a picture. You see that tree? It's already begun to sprout. And now you know summer is near. Right? I suspect we often overlook the simplest meaning of things like this. Now, I'm not saying there's not a connection with Israel. And in fact, I will go on to say I think there is a connection with Israel. I'm not saying there isn't a connection with the cursed tree, but I am saying don't overlook the obvious, that he was sat in a place where it was known there was olive trees and fig trees at a time of the year when they would be putting out fresh growth. Right? And he's simply saying to them, look at that tree. You know we're getting round to summer. Verse 33, so you also, when you see all these things, know it is near at the doors. What things? I would suggest the things he's been talking about. The troubles, the false messiahs, and so on. Know that you're getting close. He's already complained that the Jews knew how to read the sky in the morning, right? And didn't understand the sign of the times. He's telling them, I've told you enough to know when it's getting close, when it's at the doors. Now, the real difficult bit is the next verse. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. So, one possibility is when we saw the withered fig tree of Israel beginning to put forth shoots, we decide what a generation is and count from there a number of years. Is that what Jesus was wanting us to do?
No.
I think so.
No. Right?
Doesn't the word also mean race?
Well, precisely. Let me share my screen again. So, the word itself is a strong word, and he says it comes from 100. It is number 1085. A generation, by implication, an age, the period of or the person's life, an age, generation, nation, time. Right? But the word that it comes from, according to Strong, actually means kin. Abstract or concrete, literal or figurative, individually or collectively. Born, countryman, diversity, generation, kind or kindred, nation, offspring or stock. And the word that comes from, just to make it more so, it's prolonged. It's got many meanings. Down here at the bottom, it says used with great latitude. It's something comes from it. But again, when we translate into English, sometimes it's not easy to be fine-tuned enough. I think he's saying here, this race, what's he been telling them? You're going to go through a time of terrible trouble, worse than anything you've expected. Right? Are we going to survive? Question. Right? And things like that. And I think he's saying to them, I'm telling you that in spite of all the bad things that's going to happen, the Jewish people will by no means be wiped out.
Yeah.
until all these things take place. So I don't know if his fig tree ties in with that, but I do believe this passage is a reassurance to them that the trouble that he's telling them about that's ahead isn't going to wipe out the Jewish people. And I think that's a real encouragement. Yeah. That's where I think he's coming from. And he gives them a promise in verse 35, right? Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. My promise to you, and I have to think he's thinking particularly about this promise, will not fail. My words will not come short. You can trust me for this. The Jewish race will endure. The Jewish people will be there to see this happening. Right? So don't worry. With all the trouble that I've told you is coming upon you as a people, it's not going to wipe you out. But then he turns their attention back to what is going to happen. He says, look, even I cannot tell you, the angels cannot tell you how long it's going to be till that day comes. In Thessalonians, Paul, I think it's Thessalonians, Paul says, you don't have to be in the dark. Unbelievers are in the dark. You don't have to be in the dark. You will know when he's coming, right? And 2 years ago, almost, when we started these meetings, the very first seminar, and the video is there, so I'm not going to go into great depth, is on preparing for the future, lessons from Noah. And it was, we took in this passage because the unbelievers at the time of Noah was not ready for the cataclysm. But one man, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives were ready. And I believe what Jesus says here is telling us how we can be ready for when he comes back. And he basically gives us this picture of Noah. He says the unbelievers in those days were just getting on with life. They were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, paying taxes and moaning about the amount until the day that Noah entered the ark and did not know what was about to happen until the cataclysm came and took who away? Noah and his family? No, it took these unbelievers away. And he says that's what it's going to be like at the coming of the Son of Man. Right.
I just realised that even the very rich who have their savings offshore, who Jeremy Hunt is not taxing, are not going to get away with it.
Right. Rose, I've only just noticed your hand up. Is it you or John?
It was me. Years ago, I heard Arnold Fruchtenbaum waxing lyrical about generation. And his interpretation is that it's any group of people with a shared belief. And those people who were listening to Yeshua at that time, there has always been a group of people who shared, who understood and believed what he was saying.
A remnant. There'll always be a remnant.
A remnant, yeah.
And only a remnant. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for that. So he says, here's a picture for you. Noah was ready. He was alert. He was listening to God, and he did what God told him to do. That's how you can be ready for my second coming, right? Listen to God and do what it was, right? But the people who were not listening to God got taken away. So verse 41 follows on from that. 2 men will be in the field, one will be ready and the other not. One will be ready and left behind. One will not be ready and be taken away. That is the picture he's given them of Noah's flood, right? Not to be sexist about it, he says 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and the other left, right? So this is what he's telling them. When he comes back, there'll be people who'll be ready and prepared, and they will be safe. The ones who are not ready and prepared will be taken away like the ones who were taken away by the flood. And I'm sorry, Nick, we should have read to verse 43, but I'll read it. All right. He says, watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. So he's saying to them, be watchful. You want to be ready for me? Well, you can't put it in your diaries. You can't put it on your calendar to send you alert. Jesus will come back in a week's time. I better get ready, right? There is no date set. But if you are watching, right, you will be prepared. Know this, if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into, right? Anybody. If you got a message through your letterbox that said, I'm going to break into your house on the 15th of December 2022, where would you be? What preparations would you have made for that date? Right? But there is always a threat of a thief breaking in. Right? Jesus coming back isn't a threat unless you are not prepared. And he's saying to them, I am not giving you a date to book. I am telling you, you have to live ready to know when I'm coming back. Right? And he says that, verse 44, therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. And that is his springboard for what he talked about in the rest of the chapter and for most of chapter 25. The Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect, but you can be ready. And he tells them how to be ready. So I'm going to pause there. Is there anything people want to feed back with?
I was just thinking when we're talking about kin and kind, you know, as creationists, we always go back to Genesis, where things will only breed after their kind. We know that all the canids will only ever breed dogs and wolves and jackals and foxes and what have you. And that means that, as you say, there will still be Jews there when he comes a second time. You know, they will breed true to their kind.
Yeah.
Of course, the fact that, as lots of people have remarked, they're virtually the only race from that time that is still intact, that is still separate. There's no other race from that time that is still separate.
And as I've said it, as you've mentioned creationism, creation and so on, Philip, they also disprove Darwin's theory of the survival of the fittest. They have survived despite the fact they've not been the fittest people.
Yeah. Wasn't Darwin's theory, actually, but he used it.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah. In fact, his theory of sexual selection doesn't work either, because all the peacocks breed, however big their tails are.
Yeah, but Israel is an amazing surviving race.
Yeah.
And it can only survive because God has been its protector, despite their troubles and their unfaithfulness to him.
Oh, yeah.
And that's an encouragement, really.
That's
Any
one
other
of those-
comments, anybody?
There's one thing. When they disobeyed in the wilderness, that generation, it was 38 years, they were all to die before they were going to the land. If you think about it, that generation that the Lord was in, one person actually is alive today.
Yeah. But he also died.
He also died, but he's also alive today.
Yeah.
So that generation has not passed away.
Yeah. If we take the English translation, Andrew, I think you can try and work around it like that. I think Jesus was being plain to them and actually saying, your people will not be wiped out by all you go through.
I'll take those two things together, though, because, of course, he is the true Jew. He is the Israel of God. He is always the one that actually circumcised in the heart they relate to. He is the one that actually is the true Israel.
Yeah.
So he is not going to pass away. His words will not pass away.
Yep.
And he's alive today, and he's coming back.
Hallelujah. Yeah.
Thank you.